Hey guys, it's Helen Hartsmith here with
Kathy.
um so this video is categorized as a top 10. However, there are two things that we're about to do in this video that we don't normally do during a top 10. Kathy, what are they?
Well, we're not counting.
Right. And we're just kind of discussing this subject. So there's going to be 10 things in this discussion, but at least 10, there's going to be more than 10. So, Kathy, why don't you give, because it's kind of become your thing to give the kids what the subject is for this top 10. Yeah, I think that's something that, I just have you do.
Well, children, gather round.
Gather round,
We're going to
children.
talk about the multiple things that you need to look for in a spiritual teacher slash leader.
Yes.
And maybe some
So,
things to avoid too.
right, yeah, definitely some things to think about, some things to look out for, some guidelines. So I have to say that there is a bit of a prompt for for having this discussion. I knew that I wanted to do a video on this subject, and I I really thought that I didn't want it to be like just me talking about it. I wanted like the both of us to kind of get into this and really talk about things because we have studied under various traditions in our time on this path. And so, not to date us or anything, but we've been around the block
A little
a
bit.
time or two. So there are some folks out there that I've recently come into contact with that I'm fearful for the people that are following them. And I don't want to point anybody out or anything like that because it's not necessarily my place to tell somebody that they're wrong for doing what they're doing, although some of their practices are definitely unsafe, especially during these times. But instead of calling someone out and like being a hater on that person, I thought that it would be a better use of our time to just to share some wisdom basically and some stuff that we've kind of been able to put together from our time on this path. Does that sound about right?
Right.
So, do you want to kick off and like maybe because we of course we both have like lists of things that we came up with for discussion points. So do you want to like just kind of take the one off the top of your list?
Sure.
Because we kind of talked about our lists beforehand, and there's only one that like really is like the same thing. There are some things that might kind of brush against each other or whatever, but I think we can make this work. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So what's like the first thing on your list there?
So my big number one that we're not counting numbers is it's important to know what it is you want from a mentor. Do you want somebody who is going to counsel you? Do you want somebody who is going to teach you? Do you want somebody who's going to celebrate the Wheel of the Year with you? Do you want someone who is going to challenge you to other paths, to look at other things? What is it that you want? Do you want, you know, that's the important thing. What path are you
So
following too? Do you want somebody to teach? Do you want someone to teach you Wicca or Dianic Wicca or You know, very wicca. It's important to know what exactly it is that you want.
And it's almost like you have to know the kind of student that you are to know what kind of a teacher to look for. Do you learn by doing, or do you learn by watching, or do you learn by reading, or and know what that means as well, because different teachers within the same tradition will have different styles. And unfortunately, there are some folks out there that don't have a lot of options around them. But if you're in a bigger city, then you might, come across people that have different teaching styles. So know that there are different styles of teaching and there's different styles of learning. And it's okay to kind of look into what that's going to do. Does that sound fair as well? So the big thing for me, kind of like runs alongside yours, is when I look for a teacher, I look for someone who has experience and or training. I am not interested in learning from someone who hasn't been practicing as long as I have. If someone is new to witchcraft and only been on the path for a year, you're not ready to teach. I think that's a pretty safe, and I mean, there are people that are natural born everything, but I would think that a responsible individual would want longer in their training than a year, probably longer. We didn't consider teaching until we were like 10 plus years in.
Right. And to build on that, most traditions, if you're following a tradition, require you to have all 3 degrees or more degrees, depending on the tradition, before they will even consider allowing you to teach. So I agree, 1 year is not enough. And I'm not sure really that 3 years, although if you have pretty intense training, 3 years could be. It depends on the person. It depends on where you're learning from.
Right. Yeah. Because that's going to have a lot to do with like when you're ready as well. But I understand that as pagans, there's a lot of paganism out there that is, let's be real, a lot of paganism is reconstructed. Okay. We don't know.
Paganism is reconstructed.
Well, it is reconstructed in the capacity that we don't know the daily practices of the Celtic people.
Right.
We don't know how they worshiped the gods. They didn't leave a written language. The only historical evidence that we have from them that's written is from the Roman perspective. So of course, there's a taint. So, it is reconstructed. It is reconstructed from, the time of Gardner and Saunders forward. So we don't know how these things happened. So there is a lot of personal gnosis or UPG involved in a lot of traditions and a lot of people's practices. But I look for someone whose practice is not completely based off personal gnosis.
Right.
I want there to be training under somebody as well. So why don't we go on to your next one?
I have so many next ones. So I think it's important to observe the person and ask around about the person. to find out what kind of a person it is that you're going to be learning from. Do they say what they're going to do and do what they say? Are they liars? Are they gossips? Do they spend their time complaining about people or complaining about their lives? Or do they talk other people up and support them? And, I'm not saying they have to have a perfect life, but at least be a little bit positive about things and not focus on the bad things that are happening or have happened, especially in this time of COVID when everything bad seems to be happening. But there's positives in everything. And does this person live their life looking toward the good things, looking toward the future,
Mm-hmm.
looking up?
Right. And it's not like you're looking for a saint.
No.
But you're looking for someone who talks the talk and walks the walk. And we all have bad days. I have bad days where sometimes I just want to be catty, but that's not an everyday situation. There are days when I'm like, social media crazy and not, so we have good days and we have bad days, but in general, you want to look for somebody who talks the talk and who walks the walk of what they're teaching or what have you. So yeah, that is really important. And that has to do with character. I think that boils down to character quite a bit. For another thing that's really important for me is inclusivity. There's a lot of stereotyping that happens. There's a lot of keeping certain individuals out of other religions. And that was part of I don't want to be a part of this. I want to see LGBTQ plus inclusivity. I want to see racial equality. I want to see us being understanding of other schools of thought, and not say, oh, well, that's interesting. Your religion tells you that the sky is pink. Well, let me tell you why you're wrong. I don't want to see that. I want to say, okay, well, that's interesting. Can we discuss that?
Right. Because it's important to be open to other things. If you don't learn, you die, right? You have to learn
Right.
and grow. And part of that is looking at other people's belief systems. And honestly, when it comes down to it, a lot of these belief systems have a kernel of similarities. They all boil down to the same thing. So how does one group look at it as compared to another group look at it? It doesn't mean either one of them is wrong. It just means it's different. And when you learn that different way, you expand your horizons and you can maybe change how you're doing things to, make it a little bit better and more fine-tuned for you.
Right. Or maybe you don't. And that's
Right.
okay.
And that's
Because,
fine.
Sometimes it's our differences that bring us together.
Right.
And through communication is when we do find those things that, those little kernels that, oh, your belief system has this, well, mine has something very similar. And look, we just found a connection.
Right.
And it could be two people who were from two very, very different socio groups that you never would have thought could find a commonality. And that's about inclusivity, and that's about being prepared to have the tough conversations.
And being willing to have those conversations, because some leaders who are less than reputable are, nope, you have to believe this because this is the only way and anything else is totally wrong.
Right.
And won't even allow any kind of discussion on it.
And that's what a lot of us left Christianity for.
Yes.
So, for sure. So what's next for you?
So I'm going to combine a whole bunch of them together in this one, but We talked about, what they say, but and sort of what they do, but I think we need to go a little further into what they do. Is this person doing drugs all the time? Are they addicted? Are they out cheating on their spouses all the time? Do they spend beyond their means? Do they not have a job and expect you to support them by paying for, your teaching?
Is the only way that you can have access to their community is to pay for it.
Right.
That's a big red flag right there.
Yeah.
That their values, if you're paying something to be a part of them and that money is going to support them.
Well, now to be fair, some people do this as a living. That's what they do is they teach. So in order to take classes from them, you pay them. But that's a little bit different than saying, okay, I'm going to do this that you can get minor little things. But if you really want to get the true dirt, you gotta sign up for my Patreon and pay
right.
$50 a month.
Or if the only connection that you can have to community. For instance, we first of all, our students don't pay us to take classes through us. But even if they did, say we did charge students to take classes through us, through the Mystics of Riallure. We have open rituals throughout the year. And people get invited to those rituals, but you don't have to pay to be there. You don't have to pay to even find out that they're existing.
Also, or we did before COVID shut everything down, we were doing a monthly pagan meetup in our community so that people who had an interest in paganism had somebody to talk to about it. And the only charge there was is you bought your dinner at the restaurant we were at.
Right.
And so that was, we run a Facebook group that has these people who have been to that. And, we communicate with people we don't expect them to support us.
Right.
And that type of thing. But, again, that kind of went back to the money, but drugs, alcohol, sex, alt-right stuff with gun running and, that kind of stuff. Does this person live a stable life and are they a productive member of society? That's important because do you really want to learn from somebody who isn't?
Right.
You wouldn't go to a college where a teacher wasn't a productive member of society with some background in history in their subject. And, if he was selling drugs in the classroom, you theoretically would turn around and walk out.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so that kind of like goes in line with your values.
Mm-hmm.
Does the person that you're potentially thinking about learning from or looking at as a leader, do their values match up with yours?
Right.
I think
I guess if you were a drug addict and you were okay with the teacher also being a drug addict, first of all, I'd say, what are you doing with your life? But secondly, that value would mesh up, and then that would be, a little different. But you're right. It really has to do with your values matching up, because I personally couldn't learn from somebody who, for example, was cheating on their spouse all the time. That would be a big non-starter for me. I would not be able to respect that person.
Right. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So another thing that kind of is a warning sign for me is how or if a person deals with minors. For us as a coven, it's within our bylaws that a child has to be accompanied by a parent to anything like an open ritual. For my own personal ethics, I am not comfortable with the possible liability that comes from accepting a minor as a student. without the parents' knowledge. Now, if there was a 16-year-old out there that came to me and said, I want to learn from you, then my initial response would be, you are not of age, and we either need to have a discussion with your parent, or we're waiting until you're 18. Because for me personally, not that I don't like kids, because I do like young people. I worked in community theater for 10 years and worked very closely with a lot of high school and college age actors and musicians, and they're fantastic people. But there is a liability when it comes to a teacher situation, especially when we're looking at witchcraft. If I were Christian and wanting to do like a teen Bible study, I'm sure lots of parents would be totally down with that. But teaching your kids about witchcraft, there'd be a parent that would be like, yeah. And so if you're looking to join a group and there's kids involved, there's minors involved, and my first question would be, where's this kid's parent? And if kids are allowed, to kind of be a part of everything, and especially if there's information out there that a minor can gain access to, we've talked about drug use. If a minor has access to information about using drugs for trance work, that is a liability for me. That is not okay. That kind of information should not be in an open forum where, a kid can go look at the internet all they want. I can't police you there. But what I can do is I can police you where I have a certain amount of control. And so minors for me and how they're dealt with, that's a sticky subject.
Yeah, it really is. And me personally, I don't think that I would be willing to train a minor, even with parental permission, unless I was related to that kid. Like one of my granddaughters was interested, and we sat down and had a good couple of conversations. Not any formalized classes, but her mom is well aware of what I am, and
Right.
The kid's 18 now, but I would not feel comfortable doing that with someone else's kid. Not at all.
Unless it was like a friend who you had known the child from the time they were a baby or small or whatever.
Right. Well, that would be family.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, minors, that's a big thing for me. That's a big red flag for me.
Yeah,
for
they're
sure.
just so vulnerable to anything, and they don't really see.
There's so much going on for them.
It's just best to not have them involved unless a parent is right there with them.
Right. Exactly. What's next for you?
Well, I skipped a whole bunch. So, and we kind of talked about community work. So let's dive into that one a little bit deeper. Is this person a leader in the community? It doesn't have to be in witchcraft or paganism. Do they volunteer? Do they give food to the food banks? Do they give money to the Humane Society? Is their home open and welcoming to friends and neighbors? Do they do something like a pagan meetup? What is it that they do in the community to make their community a better place, to make their job a better place, to make their neighborhood, their homes a better place? You want someone who is going to lift you up, someone who's going to encourage you and make your life better and help you make your life better. So you want to look for somebody who does that, not just in teaching paganism, but in all aspects of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, someone who talks the talk and walks the walk. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I want to controlled substances is another worrisome topic for me. Not that I'm against drug use or alcohol or anything like that, but I think that if I think that when it comes to trance work, um, controlled substances have a place. Their place is probably not as widespread as, say, meditation in trance work. So if I came into contact with someone that I was looking at, as a spiritual leader or as a teacher, and all they did was want to use controlled substances for trance work, I would probably feel leery about that individual just because there are tons of other things that are out there and available. And that kind of stuff it should be used a little more tightly, in my opinion.
And to build on that a little bit too, just because we had experience in this in the past, if someone wants to come into ritual drunk, it's not a good idea, or high. Controlled substances have their uses in trance work, and a lot of people use them for recreational purposes, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're doing it legally and safely, but it doesn't belong in ritual space. Except in very specific instances.
Right.
And it's also important to note that no one should ever bully you or pressure you into taking drugs or alcohol if that's not something that you want to do. They should respect the boundaries because we have dry, half our coven's dry. We have members of our coven who absolutely do not and will not drink any kind of alcohol whatsoever. And like we have people who've never had alcohol, and I don't know how old Cornflower Wolf is. She's 40 something,
30 something,
and never alcohol. So we would never ever pressure her. Oh, here's cakes and ale. Here, have the ale. No, you don't do that. We always have something available in that type of thing that is not alcoholic, so that they have that option. It's very, very important that you never feel like you're pressured when you're in any kind of spiritual work. It's okay to go outside your boundaries a little bit, but don't ever feel pressured or bullied into doing something, especially drugs or alcohol or sex, that you don't feel comfortable
or pain.
Right.
Definitely. If someone asks you if you want to take part in some kind of a ritual for, say healing or, trance work or anything like that, if they give you something to drink and say, drink this, my first question is, what's in it? Because I'm a sovereign individual and I have a right to know what I'm taking into my body. And I want to make an educated decision. I'm never going to take something and just take a drink of it because I'm told to. It's not going to happen. And if somebody asks you to do that, then in my opinion, they don't have your best interest at heart.
And they don't.
Exactly. So I would do it.
To go off your drugs thing, I want to touch a little bit on sex. You should never, ever be pressured into sex. There are some traditions that require sexual initiation, and I've never been a part of those, but I know people who have. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea.
It's not, for me, it's not worth it. There are plenty of other opportunities. There are plenty of other circles that would be open to having someone and to not have, a sexual aspect to it. It wouldn't be worth it for me.
And it muddies the waters too. If you're looking at somebody to lead you spiritually, having a sexual relationship with that person, it's
really not necessary. Right.
Yeah.
Right. We live in a day where there's a lot of communicable diseases and stuff like that. And while, again, sex magic has a place, but it has its place in the correct space and time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things like that that would be a red flag for me, if it came up. And again, we can't stress enough, you are a sovereign individual. You have to claim that sovereignty, and you have a right to say, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable.
Well, and you don't even have to say that. You have a right to say no.
Right.
Just flat out no. No, I'm not doing it. No, I don't want this. No.
Now, I can say that there are some, especially when you look at initiatory practices, there are some traditions where their initiatory practices might push the bounds of your comfort level. But if that's going to happen, a responsible teacher or leader would explain everything to you prior to the event happening so that you are prepared. So if there is a possibility that you think, like if you've got a trauma for something, then if something might trigger that trauma, you need to be aware of that before you're sitting in ritual, in whatever, experiencing this and have an utter meltdown. No leader wants that to happen. They would like for you to have a clean healing experience.
Leader wants that.
Right. So those are red flags, and you have a right to say no.
Right.
Yeah. What's next on your list? Do you have anything left?
I actually have two things left. One is, can you see this person's spiritual practice in their daily lives? So do they leave offerings? Do they have altars in their home? Do they practice the Wheel of the Year? Do they practice divination? Are they doing things that you want to learn how to do? Do they, spend a lot of time outside and reflect on their
place in the universe?
Yeah, do they meditate? What is it that they do that shows you as they live that they are really walking that talk?
Right. And are they doing things that you want to do? Again, with that syncing up of values, that syncing up of, what are you looking for? What are you looking for in a teacher? What are you looking to know? What are you looking to experience? Is this individual showing those things that you want to know?
Are you already in some kind of a relationship with this person where they're already showing you some of these things that you want to learn? If only by example, right? Leaders lead by example.
I think the most effective leaders lead by example.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have anything else?
I just had a list of questions you should ask the person before you sign on.
Why don't you do that?
Okay.
Share those.
So some of it covers what we've already talked about, right? How long is this person?
It's a recap.
Yeah. How long has this person been practicing? What have they been practicing? Is it hoodoo? Is it some kind of Hellenistic practice? Is it Egyptian? What are they practicing? Is this something you want to learn? How long have they been teaching?
Mm-hmm.
How long have they been studying? Which is different than how long have they been practicing, and who have they been studying with?
Mm-hmm.
And can you give me some examples of how you live this life on a daily basis? Do you feel comfortable showing me your altar or talking to me about morning prayers and meditation? What is it that you do? Tell me what you do. Is the teaching that you do in a group setting or privately one-on-one? Is it online? Is it on Skype calls? What is the method in which they're going to be teaching? And kind of subcategories of that is, what am I going to be needing to do? Am I going to be needing to attend every Sabbath for a year, every SBAT? Am I going to need to write 10 research papers? What's expected of me from your teaching? Is there a fee? That's a big one. And what kind of supplies will I need? Because it's important to get that up front, not only the fee, but the list of supplies, because depending on your teacher, some of the supplies may be either hard to get or kind of pricey, and it might take you a few months to find that stuff. And here's another really big one, and it doesn't seem like it's really big, but it is super big. Are you willing to put me in touch with former students to give you references? So these are all things to ask, and I'm sure there are more. If you have more, please put it in the comments, because
and quite honestly, I think that those are most of them, I mean, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but most of them are pretty decent questions that a potential teacher might ask you as a potential student.
Right. That's exactly true. And if they're not asking you these questions, that's kind of a red flag too. I mean, obviously the teacher's not going to pay you to learn, but can you afford what I'm going to charge?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think the last thing that I want to throw out there is that, as someone who is seeking, or might, who may be seeking a teacher or a leader, I would say don't limit yourself to just one form of paganism, one form of witchcraft, one form of Wicca, because there's a lot out there, and there's a lot that that you can educate yourself on without having to. The internet is a wonderful thing. You can have zero contact with someone and gain a vast amount of knowledge just by, reading blogs, going to The Wild Hunt and Pathos Pagan, by going to YouTube and checking out YouTubers like, you may be doing right now.
There's and books galore. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. That's not to say that you won't, and you probably will at some point find the path that you want to stick to and follow. But I think it's important, as somebody who's learning, to not limit yourself to that, because it's back to that little kernel of things in every tradition, every path.
Right.
You can learn things from somebody who follows completely different path than you. You just have to be open to it.
Right.
And I know that Helen and I are really emphasizing that because we're very eclectic in our practices, and our coven is very eclectic. And we have seen that we can pull things from a lot of different traditions and religions and use that and adapt it to our own practices, and not limit ourselves to, you have to do this because somebody told you to. 2,000 years ago.
Right.
Oops, was that my...
Right. So, I hope this has been helpful. It's a subject that's kind of been weighing on my subconscious and my soul for a number of weeks, for a very personal reason, because I've been looking at some things and just started going, what the heck's happening here? So if this video has been helpful, if you liked it or learned something, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. Cathy sent me a link. That I'm going to put in the description box, and that is a link for what?
It is Boneless Cults something or another. Cult danger evaluation frame. And it's a list of questions that you can look at and rate from low to high to give you the danger of whatever it is that you're doing may be a cult. And it talks about dogma and manipulation and censorship and just a lot of different factors that go into the makeup of cults, so that if you are looking at a leader, or if you're already in a situation where you go, this doesn't seem right, you can look at this framework and say, well, let's just rate these out, and then that will, tell you if you're really in danger or not.
Mm-hmm. Right. So she's given me that link that will be in the description box. And I want you to send me that list of questions too, because I'll either put that in the description box, or I might do like a separate blog post to include that there. I want to see how long of a list it is. I don't want to make the box too full of information.
Well, I really started off with like 5 questions and kind of expounded a little bit. So
right,
it's only really just 5 questions.
Yeah. So I'll probably put that in the description box then. There'll be something somewhere. So also please look in the description, or in the box, for links for social media, my Instagram, Cathy's Instagram, all that kind of stuff. This has been a little bit of an unconventional top 10, but I know that a lot of times when you see us in this matter, you think top 10. So I thought, well, let's just kind of you ride this wave a little bit, and we'll do an unconventional top 10 this time. So that's going to be it for this time. As always, my dear, it is lovely to see your face.
We just don't see each other enough.
I know. Hopefully soon, one day.
Someday soon, when it'll get warm and we can, be outside.
Yeah, that'd be good. So, alrighty then. Well, thanks, guys, for taking the time to walk the path for a little time with us. And until next time, blessed be.